What's up everybody, it's CJ and I'm back with another Fort Briar furnishing video. So today I am working on the Goldhill house. So the world itself is not out just yet, but it's currently being made. It's by Damien F519, also known as Gargamel, and he asked me if I wanted to kind of furnish a couple houses for him, so I said yes. So this is the Goldhill house. Now the world itself is not out obviously, but there is a second beta that is available for you to download. It's available for download for people to playtest. So if that is something that interests you, I will leave a link to the world link down below, and then you can play it and then tell Gargamel if there's like anything that needs to be changed, you know, any routing issues or something like that. So if that's something that interests you, I'll leave a link to it down below. But today I am furnishing the Goldhill house, and this is for a house of, I don't know, y'all, there's like a lot of Sims that live here. Okay, so there's the dad, Gregory, there's the mom, Christine, there's the daughter, Deanne Day. They also have 3 sons, so the oldest son is named James, the second son is Jeremy Hans, and then the baby is Wesley Ruff. So there's a lot of Sims that live in this house, y'all. So basically the story is that the mom and dad met. The dad works at a failing business, and then his wife has a shoplifting addiction, so she's a kleptomaniac, which kind of makes a little bit of sense because, okay, y'all, I had a budget with this house. So if you remember at the apartment that I furnished last week, that one I think I had like 25,000 simoleons. This time I have 35,000, so I had 10,000 extra simoleons to kind of play around with, which again, it sounds like a lot of money, but it's really not in terms of The Sims 3 because there's a lot of objects in this game that are just expensive. I literally did not know what I was going to do starting out, y'all, and I even messaged Gargamel and I was like, hey, what happens if I run out of money? And basically Gargamel was like, well, just use cheap objects, you know, that way you can kind of like save more money. And I was like, you know what, true. So basically what I ended up doing was I used a lot of cheap objects, y'all. So we have a lot of stuff from base game. So we have like those cheap chairs, a cheap lamp, the cheap rugs that I always use. So the mom is a kleptomaniac, and I was thinking that, okay, well, maybe, you know, like how when you go to a furniture store or something like that, and how they'll have like furniture out on display for you to test out, you know, you can see like how comfy it is. They have like beds or mattresses and stuff like that. So I like to think that maybe the mom would go to like furniture stores and stuff like that, and I don't know how, but I like to imagine that she maybe like stole some stuff. So like maybe she stole like a lot of like display furniture, so that's why like a lot of the furniture in the house looks kind of like basic in a way. As I was building this house, I was trying to like go through and I was looking at all the families' descriptions and like looking at their interests and stuff like that, their favorite color, because I wanted to kind of like have this house be a house for them, you know. So I found out that they also have a dog and a cat. I don't know how I missed that at first because they're literally in a family like list. I just missed it. So they have a dog named Peggy Sue, and they also have a cat named JJ Stones. So again, I don't know how I forgot about the pets. So you'll see at the very end of the video, I include a couple pet bowls. There's a scratching post for the cat, and then there's like a little like toy box for both pets. And then you know what's interesting too, y'all? So not only did I have 35 simoleons, Gargamel was like, yeah, I also want you to include some outdoor furniture as well. Now in the end, I do pull it around and the house is fully furnished, but I was struggling so much. So you'll see that in the kitchen, I'm using these really cheap countertops. We have the cheap stove, the cheap fridge. The sinks are not really cheap, but these are like some of the cheapest sinks that we have, and I wanted to use like the sinks that belong in the kitchen, you know. So I use those, and then I use this like oval shaped table with these chairs from base game. These aren't the cheapest chairs, but I wanted some stuff that kind of looked nice, you know. I feel like a lot of the budget could have went to probably other places, but you know, it's one of those things like when you're on a budget in a Sims, it's like, okay, even if you have enough money for the cheapest thing, it's like, do you always want to use the cheapest thing? Because, you know, sometimes the cheap objects, you know, they'll look nice, but like, you know, you can still kind of tell it's a cheap object, does that make sense? Even if you used a color wheel. So for me, for this build, it was more like, okay, CJ, yes, you can use the cheapest thing, but maybe you can get something that's a little bit more expensive that looks a little bit nicer. I also realized too when I was furnishing the kitchen that we have this room that's attached to it. So I was like, why don't we make this into a dining room? So instead of having the table be in the kitchen, I put it in the dining room. It's not that big of a table in the grand scheme of things. I put that table in the dining room, and then I put a couple of island counters in the kitchen just so you could sit down at the kitchen if you wanted to and eat and stuff. You'll see me also kind of go around the build, and I'm kind of like going to different rooms. A lot of it was just me trying to make sure that we had enough money for certain like objects, so like beds, and I wanted to make sure we had money for toilets and stuff like that. Also, a lot of the bathrooms look very similar, and the whole entire house uses the same wallpaper pretty much, except for the garage. And so at first the garage was going to be pretty empty because Gargamel was like, I didn't have to worry about providing a car for the family. So I did not provide one, and I was just gonna leave the garage completely empty, but then I was like, no, we can do something. So at the very end of the video, I kind of like pulled together the last remaining bits of money to kind of add some stuff in there. And also, I wasn't allowed to use stuff packs for this build. I could only use expansion pack objects, so needless to say, I was kind of struggling a little bit. But now we move back to the dining room. So I'm using another dresser in here just to kind of have like some filler furniture. I'm using the china cabinet from Ambitions. I also put a rug down here underneath the table just to fill in some more space. And then I used that big plant from World Adventures just to have something in the corner. I feel like a lot of the rooms, I was just really trying to like make the room seem more filled in without kind of going over the budget. But I think I did a pretty good job, all things considered. I almost thought we weren't going to have enough money. Like literally, I was about to start deleting stuff that I placed down. But in the end, everything turned around. I am so glad that we have the color wheel, and I'm so glad that the color wheel does not charge you when you use it, because like y'all, if we were charged for changing colors, it would be over for us. I'm not even gonna lie, like this would just be a flop. But luckily, the game does not charge. You can freely recolor, so I love that a lot. So now we go to the upstairs portion, and I'm going to let you know now, the hallway is pretty much empty. There is a scratching post that I put at the very end of the video, but the hallway, for the most part, is completely empty. I thought the money would be best spent in the bedrooms, you know? Yeah, the hallway is kind of empty, but if you play here, you could definitely add more stuff, you know? So now we move on to the bedroom. So this is like where the parents sleep. Now, the mom's favorite color is blue, so I was like, you know, why don't we have like a blue room? And okay, at first I thought the dad's favorite color was Spiceberry, but it's actually violet, so it's a slightly lighter color than Spiceberry. So I decided to have the bedroom be blue, and then we have the bathroom kind of like be the dad's color scheme. That way we have like a little bit of both in here. So for every bedroom in the house, I'm using the bed from the Showtime pack. If you don't know, this is a really good bed. Not only is it cheap, but it's also level 7 energy, which means your Sims can sleep a little bit faster in this bed and they get their energy up a little bit more. So I guess that's like a pro tip if you didn't know, if you have Showtime. If you're on a budget and you want a really good bed, this bed is the way to go. Level 7 is really good for a cheap bed. I also use the nightstand from the Pets pack. The dresser is base game, and I use the Generations bookshelf, which looking back was probably a little bit too expensive, you know, but it looked nice in the corner, so I kept it. And then right here is the bathroom. So the bathroom, we have violet, or I guess Spiceberry technically, wallpaper and flooring. I'm using the tub object this time around, and then I decided to make this bathroom into a Jack and Jill kind of situation, so it connects to the nursery. And then speaking of the nursery, y'all, I struggled a little bit. So okay, I wanted to kind of like have every room be this, you know, the Sims that lives in there, their favorite color. So the baby's favorite color is seafoam. Now, I feel like when you use the hex code on the color wheel, even though it's the same like hex number that you'll see on Google or whatever, I feel like sometimes the colors can still be a little bit off. So seafoam to me looked like a mint green, and I wasn't like the best fan of it, but I ended up using it. I kind of just made it maybe a little bit darker, but I'm using this cloud wallpaper in here, and I'm using the crib from the base games, so I was able to delete that other bed in here, you know, for something a little bit cheaper. I also used the Into the Future baby mobile because it kind of matches a little bit. I'm using that really cheap dresser from the Supernatural pack. I told y'all we're on a budget this time, so I had the really cheap dresser. I'm using this kind of expensive bookshelf from the Generations pack, but it kind of filled in a good amount of space, and it is like good for like a nursery, so I used it. I'm using the rocking chair from Supernatural as well. We have this really cheap lamp that I love to use in nurseries, so I put that in a corner, and then we're also using the rug from the base game as well. I realized that I did not put a toy box in the nursery, but luckily the baby's brother is like right down the hallway, so if he wants to play with toys, I guess he can kind of go in there and play with them, or you could put some if you want. Next up we have the teenage daughter Deanne's room. So her favorite color is orange, and she likes pop music. Now I didn't give her a stereo or anything in her room, but I wanted to kind of just like make it really like cutesy, so I used butterflies on the wallpaper. I also used another butterfly print for the bed sheet. This is around the time, y'all, when I realized that we were kind of getting a little bit lower on money, so I'm giving her this love seat from base game. Her end tables are the really cheap wooden ones. Her desk is the cheap desk that came with University. You know, it's not my first choice, but you know, it does the job. Now there is no computer in this house because even if we could afford it, I felt like that might not have been a good use of 800 simoleons. I think that's how much the cheapest one in the game costs, 800. So I was like, maybe that's not the best use of money. So there's no computer in this house, but you could buy one if you want. But I gave her a desk so maybe she could do her homework. I'm using the cheap dresser from the Showtime pack. I put the rug down here from University. And then I also put an art easel in here so she could maybe do some art or something like that, you know. I was really just trying to give the Sims rooms personality, but also include some useful objects for you know, everyday gameplay. So I put an art easel. We have some cute posters up. So this is the next room. So this room belongs to the second youngest son. This is Jeremy Hahn's room. So his favorite color is Spiceberry. So I wanted this to kind of be like a purpley kind of color room. Now I kind of felt bad because I realized that his bedroom has an ensuite bathroom. And I feel like that maybe the sister should, like the older sister should at least got this room, or the older brother. But then I was like, you know what? Maybe it doesn't matter. You know, maybe she doesn't care that she doesn't have an ensuite. So I gave him the ensuite. Now he is a kid and I wanted his room to kind of be like dinosaur themed. I gave him that really big dinosaur head. I also gave him a costume chest, and if you didn't know, kid Sims can change into different costumes and pretend to be whatever it is, so they can change into a dinosaur. So I gave him like the little chest. I gave him a little rocking horse in here. There's the pirate chest toy box, and then he also has that really cheap dresser from Showtime. And then next up we move on to his bathroom. So his bathroom is basically the same as the parents' bathroom, still the same color scheme. It kind of worked, you know. So I gave him that, and then in his room I gave him a tub, and then he also has like a toilet, and then instead of him having like a pedestal sink or a sink with a cabinet, I just gave him the sink from Late Night, which is just the one that kind of connects to the wall. So at least the bathrooms look a little bit different, but they're basically the same. Like I use the same, you know, objects for most of the bathrooms. I did go back though and I added some toilet paper, you know, just for some little extra clutter. So after we've tackled this room, we go upstairs. So this is where James's room is. Now he's the oldest son. Now I gave him this room because he is into classical music. I couldn't really afford a piano. I don't think that would be a really good use of space. So I gave him a keyboard so maybe he can like pretend to play some classical music. And I figured that since he's really into music and he also has a guitar, maybe he's always playing music in his room. So I was like, maybe it would be a good idea to give him the room at the top of the house. So that way he's not being noisy and like waking up the baby and stuff like that. So yeah, his room is way up here. I feel like he probably has the best deal. He has like his own private wing of the house basically, because he also has an ensuite bathroom, but it kind of like wraps around back to like the little hallway section or the little landing. So yeah, I think he might have got the best deal out of everyone. Honestly, the parents should have got up here, but you know, it's okay, it's okay. But yeah, for his room, I gave him a desk. He has the same desk that his sister has, the same chair that his sister has. He has the end tables that his parents have in their room. Again, it's a lot of cheap furnishings, but I also put up some, you know, some posters in here as well. I gave him a guitar, so he has like a little music set up in the corner. I also gave him like an MP3 player because, you know, I'd imagine he likes to listen to music in here too. And then for his bathroom, it's also like a yellowy color scheme, but instead of me using a shower tub combo or a tub, I just used a shower object. I moved his door over one tile to put his shower in the corner. I also gave him the sink with the cabinet, and I also gave him a toilet. And I realized that the landing had some extra space, so I ended up having that be like a secondary living room or sitting area. So I used 2 love seats from the base game, and then I used the coffee table from the pets pack, you know, just to kind of have like a little sitting area. And then I also put like a really big poster up behind the couch, you know, maybe that's like one of his favorite bands or something like that. But in all, that's pretty much everything for the inside of the house. And then all I do next is I go in the backyard, and yeah, there's some furniture outside Gargamel, but not a lot. I put a picnic table, and I also put a grill, and then I put a couple of planter boxes just to have something to do back here. But yeah, we were kind of running low on money. In the end, I think we have around 78 simoleons. No, it's actually 73. Okay, I have the game pulled up, so actually we have 73 simoleons at the end of this renovation, so they're not completely broke. They have, you know, a little bit of money left over, just a tad bit. So after then we move on to the garage, and then for the garage I just put like a desk in here. I put that chair, but I deleted it because we needed some money for the toy box for the pets. And I also put some traffic cones that came with seasons, and we have like a little sign, caution sign in the corner. But that's pretty much it for the entire house, y'all. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to leave a like, comment something down below. I'll leave a link to the house link down below as well. But anyway, y'all, that is all that I have for this one, and I will see you in the next one. Bye! Thanks for watching!